When Russian President Vladimir Putin unveiled his foreign policy concept, one of its most significant elements was the pivot towards strengthening relations with Central Asia. That vision is now unfolding in concrete ways, underscoring Moscow's determination to remain a leading player in the region despite shifting geopolitical realities. The Kremlin has been keen to emphasize that this is not rhetoric but policy, grounded in numbers, strategy, and shared history. Russian officials, during recent discussions, framed Central Asia as both an economic and strategic anchor for their broader Eurasian outreach. Putin himself captured the essence of this direction when he noted, "Pinned in the foreign policy concept approved by President Putin, today we agreed to consider a range of issues related to strengthening ties in the Central Asian direction." The Russian leader stressed the country's role as one of the most vital trade and economic partners for the Central Asian republics. He underscored that this cooperation is not symbolic but measurable. First of all, Russia remains one of the leading trade and economic partners of the Central Asian states. Our total trade turnover with them exceeds $45 billion per year. That figure, he added, is supported by thousands of businesses on the ground. Around 24,000 companies with Russian capital operate in Central Asia, and joint projects are being implemented. This economic presence, Putin argued, creates a tangible fabric of interdependence, linking Russian capital, Central Asian markets, and the region's labor force into a mutually reinforcing loop. Trade, however, is evolving beyond traditional dollar-dominated transactions. The Russian president emphasized a shift towards settlements in domestic currencies, reflecting both the political desire for financial sovereignty and the practical advantages of reducing exposure to Western sanctions. The share of settlements in national currencies is growing, and the transport and logistics infrastructure in our neighboring countries is improving. This development, Russian officials believe, not only insulates the region from external shocks, but also deepens the sense of a self-sustaining Eurasian economic space. Central to Russia's long-term strategy is infrastructure development, roads, railways, energy pipelines, and digital connectivity projects. Putin highlighted that demand for such initiatives is expanding. There is a steady interest in increasing Russian enterprises to stimulate business activity, which also contributes to deepening economic integration in accordance with agreements reached at the level of presidents and heads of government. Our partners, as we see, welcome the expansion of Russian participation in infrastructure projects. This statement reflects Moscow's ambition not just to trade with Central Asia, but to embed itself into the region's physical and institutional frameworks. By becoming an indispensable partner in infrastructure modernization, Russia hopes to secure leverage that cannot easily be displaced by rival powers such as China, the United States, or the European Union. The Russian president pointed to the role of multilateral Eurasian organizations as a force multiplier for bilateral cooperation. And of course, an important support for this is the use of resources from the Eurasian Development Bank and the relevant programs of the Eurasian Economic Commission. These institutions, originally designed to consolidate the post-Soviet economic space, are now being repositioned as tools to amplify Russian influence through financial injections, technical assistance, and coordinated regulation. For Moscow, it is a way to institutionalize its presence beyond state-to-state diplomacy. Putin acknowledged the historical roots of Central Asia's economic foundation, much of which was constructed during the Soviet era. This acknowledgement, however, came with a candid recognition of the challenges posed by aging infrastructure. We naturally take into account the fact that a significant part of the material and technical base of the Central Asian states was built during the period when we lived and developed together within a single state, the Soviet Union. But that was a long time ago, and naturally the service life of this infrastructure is already quite long, in many cases exceeding the established standards. By referencing this Soviet legacy, Russia is signaling both responsibility and opportunity: responsibility for the upkeep of systems it once created, and opportunity to modernize them in ways that lock Central Asian economies closer to Moscow's orbit. Observers note that Russia's renewed Central Asia push serves several strategic purposes. First, it strengthens Moscow's economic resilience at a time when Western sanctions over Ukraine continue to bite. Second, It balances China's growing influence in the region, ensuring that Beijing is not the only heavyweight partner for Central Asian capitals. Finally, it projects stability and continuity, something the Kremlin is eager to showcase amid global turbulence. For Central Asia, the attraction is clear: access to Russian capital, infrastructure expertise, and a large market. For Russia, the gains are geopolitical, maintaining its role as a central node in Eurasia's trade and political networks. The message from Moscow is unmistakable. Russia is not retreating from Central Asia, but doubling down. By weaving together trade figures, enterprise presence, financial mechanisms, infrastructure projects, and historical bonds, the Kremlin aims to cement a partnership that is both economic and strategic. The words of Vladimir Putin during these discussions capture this direction most succinctly. Pinned in the foreign policy concept approved by President Putin in 2023, today we agreed to consider a range of issues related to strengthening ties in the Central Asian direction. For Russia, these ties are not just a matter of neighbourly relations, they are an essential pillar of its global standing in 2025 and beyond.